Hi, everyone. Welcome to our second call with Dr. Eric Grasser on the Gut Bootcamp. And today we're talking about supplements and testing. These have been the two most popular topics as all of you have sent in your questions. And I've loved getting all the questions. So by the way, keep those coming. So today we're going to talk about those two. Dr. Eric, welcome.
Thank you, Rena, for having me again. I'm excited to share all this interesting information with everybody, and I'm glad that people have enjoyed the Gut Bootcamp thus far.
Cool. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. Some of you have asked about the site, so why don't we first start by looking at the website. So let me share my screen with you, and let me take you to the website. So this is our website. If you don't have access, please ping us so we can give you access. But here's the website, and as you scroll down, you'll see we have a supplement section. And then you just click on View Details. And that'll give you two sections, Dr. Eric's recommendations and Rena's Gut Supplements. Dr. Eric's supplements, and thank you, Kavita, for that fabulous feedback. We are going to get this made into a PDF for you tonight. So this will be available as an attachment for you. These are Dr. Eric's recommendations, and he will be walking us through these today, as well as his position and strategy and recommendation on supplements. And then those of you who are familiar with my health crisis, well, I had two. I had colon cancer at 35, and then a far bigger crisis 2 years ago, starting September 2015 till about May, June of this year. I am fully healed now. I took thousands of supplements. Of those, a limited number worked. And that's what's in here. Excuse me. So these are the supplements that I took that really worked for me in terms of results. So if we have time, I'll go through some of my supplements and my experiences and why I've included the ones that I have. But let's first get started with Dr. Eric. The other question some of you have asked is about days. Some of you are inconsistently getting the emails, which I'm so sorry. They all go out from our end. So if you don't receive them, there's something happening on your filter side, which maybe it's putting it in spam. Maybe it's putting it into promotions. You know, Gmail's changed a few things in how they handle incoming email. I'm so sorry about that. To solve that problem, we put all of that in here. So day 1, day 2, day 3. So when we send those emails, they're really coming from here, right? So here's day 8, for example, which would have gone out. You can click on that, you click on view, and this is the email that went out this morning, which is for tomorrow. So everything that you need for each day is available on the site, and it's available backwards too, so you don't have to worry about fussing to find emails for a different day. You can always just have the website open at any given point in time, and you can jump around and look at different days. Also the same, we have meditations. While we put in some meditations and yoga, there's a lot more in here. So feel free to browse around there as well. Wonderful. Let's get started. All right. Welcome, Preeti. I'm going to stop your video. Okay, so let's watch the presentation on supplements. All right, Dr. Eric.
Okay, so as always, I don't want anyone to get overwhelmed, and the beauty is that you're going to be able to rewatch this as many times as you want. Save it for your own library, but obviously my patients know I use a fair number of supplements in my office, in my practice. It's not to replace the importance of lifestyle, medicine, diet, exercise, meditation, daily routine, all the things that I think can stay with us for the rest of our lives and are incredibly potent medicine, but to assist the body's healing processes and physiology. So the first slide is going to show you. People will ask me, well, is there anything in general I should always take every day for my gut? In fact, they'll ask me, is there anything I should take in general for supplements for general wellness? And the two most common general gut supplements that I think people are taking out there are probiotics and digestive enzymes. But I wrote in parentheses here, but maybe not for all. And the reason I did that is that if you look at the literature, we have handfuls of studies showing the benefit of probiotics and digestive enzymes for specific conditions. And that is in part due to the fact that there are different strains of probiotics that are being researched and put into capsules or powders. However, there isn't very good evidence that probiotics help you live longer or help you live healthier. So I usually reserve probiotics for people who are dealing with a gut problem, or after I've done specialized testing where I see that there's a rationale, or if they have a specific condition. Now we're having probiotics coming out for assisting with satiety so that you feel fuller and don't want to eat so much. We have probiotics that are specific to women's health that help reset the environment in the vagina to help vaginal infections. We have probiotics that are used for eczema in kids. We have probiotics that are helpful when you're taking antibiotics. But in general, I tell people, if you try it out and you feel better, go ahead and keep taking it. But I don't necessarily need you to take it every day if you don't have a specific condition. Digestive enzymes as well. These can aid in the digestion of proteins and fats in particular, and to some extent carbohydrates, although most people don't need help digesting carbohydrates. But again, I usually reserve them for when there's an abnormality on a functional test like a stool test. And also I do think that if people feel better on them, they don't necessarily need the testing to justify the use of digestive enzymes. You have digestive enzymes that come from plant sources and those that come from animal sources. Generally, if somebody really needs digestive enzymes and they're really deficient, I have them take a combination of both because you get, they're not exactly the same. There's some crossover, but you'll get things on the animal side and the vegetable side that are different. Okay.
Dr. Eric, I have a few questions for you. So the first question is, for someone who doesn't know if they need probiotics or not, what's the strength that you recommend?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, we have probiotics. Nowadays, the trend is, more is better. So you're going to see generally in the tens of billions of colony forming units. That's about, from what I can tell, the most that they can get in a capsule. There are powders, including prescription probiotics, that have hundreds of billions of colony forming units. Those can, I find, in people actually be hard to tolerate. They actually might feel worse taking them. They might have some stomach upset, but in certain conditions like inflammatory bowel disease like Crohn's and ulcerative colitis, I usually use something called VSL number 3, which is hundreds of billions of colony forming units. So I don't know that you need to really focus on that. If you're using a reputable company, they have probably fine-tuned the amount of colony forming units that they put in there. There's now a trend towards something called spore-based probiotics.
Yes, that was my next question.
Yeah, off the theory that how can you get something to survive in a capsule for a long time, because doesn't it need some food to eat itself, the probiotics? Interestingly, they've actually found that probiotics are shelf stable. They can be tested 6 or 12 months later and still have almost all of the same colony counts that they did when they were manufactured. So I think we have yet to see if spore-based probiotics are just a trend or if they really are superior to non-spore-based, to full, like live organism probiotics.
Okay. Do you have a favorite probiotic brand? By the way, I did take VSL number 3 for almost 6 months, and it definitely does help. Yeah. It makes you hungry, which was, for me, was a wonderful thing. Yeah. Are there other brands that you like?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think that it's a big topic in terms of brands and supplements because we only know so much about how these companies are manufacturing. Okay. That's why I stick with proprietary brands that I have a close relationship with the company, so I can ask the hard questions. I use a lot of metagenics. I do think they have good probiotics. I think Claire Labs has good probiotics, but the spore-based ones are limited now. Megaspore is the most popular, I think.
I've tried literally, I think, 24 probiotic brands just to see what works. And my recommendation is try different ones because not every brand works for everyone. I've had brands where there's this wonderful coconut kefir that I literally hive out with even today. So I think, it is good to try different brands, especially if you start reacting. The other is, I like Garden of Life, actually, especially the whole health Garden of Life, as well as the women's health. There's a question from Kavita. I hear that probiotics can make conditions like SIBO worse because we're adding to the already excess bacteria. Very good question, Kavita. I had SIBO, but I'll let Dr. Eric answer that question, then I'll share my experience.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't think we have good data to tell us the answer to this. You remember there's 1,000 strains of probiotics in our gut and more like 5,000 subspecies. So 1,000 species and like 5,000 subspecies. So theoretically, if your SIBO was due to a certain number of species and you were then supplementing with something that weren't those species, you probably wouldn't cause yourself any harm. And in fact, you may actually crowd out the overgrowth. So I don't think we really have a good answer. That's why a lot of this is trial and error.
And Kavita, what I learned, having had 4 MDGIs and then 3 other functional MDGIs, and then of course a whole host of Ayurvedic doctors, et cetera, that had expertise in gut, is that really nobody knows. And so it all comes down to logic in my mind. And to me, what seemed logical was, if it's a bacterial overgrowth and I'm on rifaximin, maybe it doesn't make sense that I'm eating probiotics while I'm taking rifaximin, because the whole point is to kill the things that are up top. And so if you're doing rifaximin, wait. And that was the recommendation of a few of the docs, was if you're doing rifaximin, you might as well just wait and then supplement. But Dr. Eric's right. We don't know if maybe it's actually good to take the other probiotic because it'll be supplementing. It does make sense that if you take the good bacteria, it's going to crowd out the bad bacteria. And with SIBO, especially, one of the most wonderful supplements that I've tried is Atrontil. And it's in my list, and at the end, when we get to it, I'll talk about that. But it actually sucks away the oxygen and the gas that breeds one of the types of the bacteria. So if you do have SIBO, when we talk about supplements, we should definitely look at Atrontil as well, which is something brand new in the market. And I've been guinea testing, picking myself on it. Okay.
All right. So we'll go to the next slide. So as I go through these,
digestive enzymes. Should people with gut issues take it with every meal or only with heavy meals?
I tell them just if you're having a smaller meal or a snack, especially one that doesn't contain much protein or fat, you can skip it. But
what about HCl?
Yeah, I debated putting HCl on here because, again, it's fairly controversial. I think that if you truly do have low stomach acid, it can be very helpful. And that we know that as we get older, we reduce the amount of stomach acid that we make. I think for younger people, I've seen a handful of folks get worse because, of course, you are inducing heartburn, and that's part of the way we prescribe it is take more and more HCl until you feel a burn in your chest with the meal, and then you reduce your dose by 1 or 2 capsules per meal, and that's your set dose. I just found that it didn't work very well in the younger people. It works, I think, better in older folks because we know that they make less HCl. And so, I didn't put it on here just because I've had such mixed results with it. And I don't think it's as benign necessarily as probiotics and digestive enzymes. Whereas if they don't work, I don't think they really cause any harm. But HCl, if it doesn't help, it may actually be contributing to irritation of gut lining, the types of things that acid reflux do.
Absolutely.
I don't know what you found, Rena.
Yeah. So my experience, because I was so weak, pretty much my gut wasn't producing any stomach acid to digest anything. So what I did is I started taking apple cider vinegar because I had read some articles around. There is some research out there that the potency of apple cider vinegar taken right before a meal or with a meal can be as potent as HCl. And I always worried about putting HCl capsules. I don't know. I just psychologically it just creeped me out that I was putting acid in my body. Yeah. So I started doing apple cider vinegar. Now I didn't take little. I would take like a tablespoon of it, and I would take it in just tiny bit of water, quarter glass of water, and just chug it down and then clear it out with, chase it down with some more cool water or warm water. And it's been one of the things that's allowed me to eat so much more food. So my personal experience in adding apple cider vinegar as a replacement for HCl has worked. I did take HCl with every meal where I had meat. And so for about a year, I would have heavy lunch meals with meat, like chicken liver and stuff, because I was trying to nutritionally build myself back up. And I did take HCl because apple cider vinegar wasn't strong enough, but I did take HCl. And it did, I mean, I would have like no gas, no bloating, easy peasy digestion if I did take HCl. But I think you like you said, you don't want to just take it willy-nilly because it could actually exacerbate the problem.
Yeah.
Okay. So next slide is
so the next kind of sets of slides will correlate to, I want you to think about the functions of the gut and how the gut operates, and then how it's not just a tube within a tube, but it has things that feed into it as well, and then it has connections to the nervous system, and it hosts the enteric nervous system, and it hosts the immune system. So production of neurotransmitters, and so that we have to not think so narrowly like in the tube, but also like how does the gut fit into the greater picture of how our bodies work, both as our own human organism and as a host for all the probiotics and whatnot. So starting in the upper GI especially, demulcent herbs are ones that will actually help nourish and coat the lining, the mucosal lining of especially the upper gastrointestinal. So the back of your throat, the esophagus, the stomach, the upper small intestine. And these are things like aloe, deglycerinated licorice. Okay, that's means that it's licorice with a specific compound taken out, which can cause high blood pressure. So it tends to be safer in the general population because we don't want to trigger high blood pressure in people who are prone to that. Marshmallow root, slippery elm, L-glutamine, and zinc can all be nourishing and healing. And I have found, I've had actually a lot of success with products that combine most of these in one for people with just some acid reflux, heartburn, something called eosinophilic esophagitis. By taking these things even just once or twice a day in powder or pill form, especially powder form, I've found very helpful for those conditions. Carminative herbs are ones that expel gas and reduce bloating. These are, you see a list here. These are great for just literally using the whole herb in the form of a tea or what we call like a chutney or a dried a churna in Ayurveda. It's called, where you actually make a little dried mix of ground up spices and you sprinkle it on your food. So things like fennel and cinnamon and chamomile, you can use in that way, or you can make teas with them. I think a lot of people are familiar if they go to an Indian restaurant and at the door as they're leaving, they'll take a little spoonful of the dried fennel seeds.
That's right.
And anise, and that's to help actually help digest the food and expel gas. Another way to prevent gas when you're cooking, people tell me I can't eat beans, they give me too much gas. Try cooking your beans with either seaweed and or something called hing, otherwise known as asafoetida, which is an Indian spice that's very sulfury. It reeks of sulfur. And if you cook with that, when you cook your beans, you may find that you'll get less gas.
What do you think of the cumin, fennel, coriander tea, the CCF tea?
CCF tea.
Because that's a recipe we've incorporated.
Yeah. That was the number one drink at my Ayurvedic school at the Ayurvedic Institute with Dr. Lad. CCF tea was always hot. They had a kettle of it all the time. It's a great thing to sip during and after the meal for carminative effects and just soothing digestion. So it's a good one. Yeah.
I swear by that. It's just because now I've gone back to, my usual terrible habits of overeating and perhaps not necessarily, eating the right things at the right time. And just one little cup of that CCF tea and it's as if nothing ever happened. Like it just, within 30 to 45 minutes, everything calms down. I highly recommend it.
Just equal parts cumin seeds, coriander seeds, which is the same plant as cilantro, and fennel seeds, and just boil and strain, and it's great. Okay, so cholagogues are substances or herbs that will actually help the movement of bile in the liver and the squeeze of bile into the gut. So a little anatomy 101, bile is produced by the liver, and it is collected by the liver into a series of canals called canaliculi, which for those who speak Latin, I suppose they would be able to tell me how exactly that translates to canals. But it's a canal system that then feeds into the common bile duct or the bile tree, the biliary tree, and then the bile gets stored in the gallbladder, which is like a little sac that's ready to go. And then when you eat, and the gut senses that there is fat and or protein in the small intestine, it will squeeze the gallbladder and expel bile into the small intestine. Phosphatidylcholine and the phospholipids, because they act kind of like a detergent, will cause the bile to be more fluid and allow it to flow through the canaliculi better. So just like old motor oil in your car engine can get sticky and too viscous and have a hard time flowing, and that's why you change your oil, you can use phosphatidylcholine and other phospholipids, something even as simple as sunflower lecithin, which is really inexpensive and you can drink it or take it in capsule form to fluidize the bile. And then things like bitters, bitter herbs, and bitter roots, gentian, burdock, dandelion, cardamom, and there's a whole list of other bitters. They will actually help expel bile. So for people that I think have biliary insufficiency, because I detected on testing, or they just get right upper abdominal pain after meals, and we've ruled out gallstones through an ultrasound, I will try to increase their bile flow as a way to help them digest better. Furthermore, actually, this is the way that we expel toxins through the body, because they are made water soluble and excreted into the bile after the liver acts upon them. And if the bile's not flowing well, you're not going to be able to get rid of those toxins. And so they can actually accumulate and stagnate and go even to places like the brain. So I will use, this is an example of where I'll use gut supplements to help another organ system outside of the gut. So in this case, it's gut help to help prevent neurotoxicity or heal neurotoxicity for the brain. So that's pretty cool.
So what's the right time to have bitters? Before dinner, before a meal, with the meal, after a meal?
Yeah, I mean, I usually tell people to have bitters with the meal. You know, you sort of start eating and then you take them, because that your bile is going to want to squeeze as soon as the food, you know, hits your small intestine, which is not going to happen probably for 30 to 60 minutes after you eat, possibly even longer. So I think taking them after would probably be just as good. People don't always remember to do anything that's not associated with a meal, so you don't want to wait too long.
It gets very complex if you start
unless they're in pain, and then they'll do anything.
It's true. What about beetroot juice? I've heard beets are great for bile as well. I mean, for example, for bitters, you know, I literally buy dandelion leaves, organic dandelion leaves every week. It's part of my weekly shopping. And every day I'll just pop a whole bunch. After my chaga mushroom tea, I'll take dandelion tea, and I've just literally popped a bunch of leaves in my cup, let them steep for 5 minutes. They literally just stay in my cup, and I just drink water. You know, that works for me. Or you can take digestive bitters. It's a great company. They do these digestive bitters, which have all of these in them. But what about beets for actually helping with bile flow?
Yeah, I haven't heard of it, but I'll have to look it up.
Okay.
People use it, mostly I see them try to use it to lower their blood pressure, because there have been some small studies showing that.
Oh, interesting.
That beetroot juice lowers blood pressure.
Okay. Yeah, I was told to incorporate beet juice to help with the bile flow. So I've just always included beetroots in my juice every day. Where do you get, I've never heard of the phospholipids. Is there a brand name for them, and are they in your list?
So the phosphatidylcholine is from Quicksilver Scientific. It's second to last, I think, on my supplement list on the website. And then the simplest phospholipid to get is just sunflower lecithin. And Now makes, Now brand is sold pretty much everywhere. They make a very inexpensive sunflower lecithin. You can get lecithin from soy, but some people don't like soy because they're sensitive to it. And so you can get soy lecithin as well.
Okay.
Okay, anti-inflammatories, of course, if we're treating something like inflammatory bowel disease, which is ulcerative colitis or Crohn's, or if we just feel as though the gut's inflamed because of food sensitivities, we can use turmeric, which we can talk about for 10 hours because it's the most studied herb in the world now.
And the hottest herb these days.
Yeah, it's very popular. But it's very anti-inflammatory and particularly good for the gut in that regard. Omega-3s like fish oil or vegetarian sources of omega-3 made from algae can be very anti-inflammatory for the gut. Boswellia, which is from a resin from an Asian tree, can also be helpful. It's usually taken in the form of an extract, just in a capsule. And then I put a question mark next to cannabidiols, which are constituents of marijuana plant, but also available through hemp. So they're legal in all 50 states. You can get CBD oil. It's another very popular supplement now. And there's some debate as to, the value of CBDs potentially for reducing inflammation in the gut.
Okay.
So, and again, I think it's pretty benign. So I don't think there's really much risk in trying it.
I take Boswellia even now. And isn't Boswellia frankincense? I think it's...
Boswellia is frankincense.
Which is amazing.
Boswellia is serrata. There's a couple different species.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I take that. I love it. Turmeric goes into every dish, including my morning golden milk. If some of you have had the golden milk recipe that's on my menu list, my menu page, that has turmeric. And I think the most important thing about turmeric to point out is you need a little pinch of black pepper with it to enhance absorption. There's been a lot of research on that, but that's on that. Okay, antispasmodic.
And then spasmodics, a lot of people with gut conditions have a lot of sensation of spasm. We don't always know why. I think it's associated with a variety of different gut conditions, but enteric-coated peppermint oil can be helpful. It's fairly easy to find at health food stores. Occasionally it'll make somebody worse because it can relax. Mint, we know, will relax the lower esophageal sphincter, that valve between the bottom of the esophagus and the stomach. Usually when it's coated and it's the oil, it's already past the sphincter and into the stomach and small intestine by the time it kind of gets released, and you don't get that, but people should be warned. That can be very helpful. And then there's a proprietary 9-herb formula made in Europe, available online, called Iberogast. And I know you said, Rena, that you took that
as
well.
It was a big part of the motility recommendation for SIBO, and definitely, absolutely swear by it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know what else?
The next slide. Yeah.
Just a really quick story. When I first got really, really sick and pretty much anything I put in my mouth translated to awful cramps, the peppermint oil, the enteric-coated peppermint oil pills were actually the first things to give me some relief. So those really do work. I think there's a question, but I'll move to the next slide. Let me check the question.
Okay, so constipation is a big problem, especially as we get more mature. My patients will know I like to say maturity, not age. So there's a lot of different ways we can target constipation with natural agents. The first group is our fiber supplements, which are basically provide bulk to the stool. And so by providing bulk to the stool, you get that inertia that pushes the stool down and keeps it moving, because when there's a bulk and a heaviness to the stool, it wants to, it's easier to get it to move through with peristalsis. Can you just go back one slide there, Anna?
Oh, sorry.
Yep. Or 2 slides, I guess.
Oh, I think we're going the other way.
Yeah. Okay. So like I said, and they also feed the microbiome. So they're food for the 90% of your gut that's not you. That's other organisms. And simplest one is psyllium, brand name Metamucil, or if you don't want that, you can get organic psyllium husk and mix it with plenty of water. Because if you drink it with a smaller amount of water, and this is Ayurvedic knowledge, it may actually cause you to become more constipated and bound up. So you want to drink it with plenty of water. There's another one called glucomannan, which comes from konjac root, I think, that grows in South America. It's also seems to be a very effective fiber supplement for constipation. Triphala is a very popular now 3-herb combination from Ayurveda. It is Bibitaki, Haritaki, and Amalaki. The Haritaki is the only one that's actually has a purgative or laxative effect, but the other two seem to be good for the gut for what we call just a gut toning properties. And so this can be very gentle. It can be very safe, and I will often use it for mild constipation, especially in my mature patients. The stimulant laxatives will actually cause the gut to peristalse more because it stimulates some receptors in the gut. This is Senna cascara or castor oil. I don't recommend to use it long term because there's some thought that the nervous system in the gut that drives the peristalsis can actually get confused over time if you use these all the time. But we use them short term, and castor oil is used in Ayurveda and as a purgative in the detox panchakarma detox programs and can be very helpful. Osmotic agents are ones that actually will pull water into the colon, because the job of the colon, one of the jobs of the colon is actually to take a very watery stool that arrives from the small intestine and make it less watery so you don't have diarrhea all the time. But if you're constipated, you may actually be doing this too aggressively. You're pulling too much water back. You have a dry stool, and a dry stool does not have lubrication. It doesn't want to move down. So the osmotic agents will actually donate water from the lining of the large intestine to the hollow or the lumen of the large intestine, and that would be things like magnesium citrate. Magnesium is, a great supplement for a lot of people because it's a stress nutrient, and we're all stressed. And the citrate form of it is particularly good at being an osmotic agent. And prunes, of course, are always a great thing to try if you're constipated. They say it takes about 6 or 7 stewed prunes a day or dried prunes a day to actually have an effect. So there's lots of things that you can try if you have constipation. Of course, if you have serious constipation, please consult your doctor. We don't want to just think that that doesn't represent a problem, because it can.
And in fact, I've been using psyllium husk and Triphala, and I did use magnesium citrate a couple of times when things got really bad. Yeah. Prunes are always wonderful if you don't have fructose malabsorption issues.
True.
For the longest time, I couldn't take prunes, but Triphala and psyllium husk are fabulous. The other thing that I've noticed is there's something called elderberries. And if you put a tablespoon of elderberries in hot water and drink it as a tea, it definitely will make you go. So I've also found that there are certain, little things like elderberries, etc., that you can find and use that will make you go as well.
Yeah. Aloe is another one.
Aloe is another one.
Can be laxative. Okay, so pro-motility agents. Motility, again, is the normal peristalsis of moving everything in the gut from an upward to downward direction. And we know that certain things help this along. Ginger. I wrote it 3 times because it really is the best thing I've found for nausea. And head-to-head against pharmaceuticals for nausea, it's just as good, if not better. It also is a pro-motility agent. So it's used in SIBO treatment. It's used in heartburn treatment. Anything acid reflux where you're having things moving in the wrong direction, in upward direction. And beautifully, Ayurveda actually talked about this thousands of years ago. Rhubarb is also a pro-motility agent. It also can work for mild constipation. Triphala, again, because one, if not more than one of the herbs in there will be pro-motil. And melatonin, possibly. In some mouse studies, it's shown to increase motility. So it's actually used in some gut healing protocols as well. Remember, it's sort of it's inversely related to serotonin production in that when you upregulate melatonin, you'll downregulate serotonin production. And interestingly, I've even seen gastrointestinal docs, MDs, use selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors or antidepressants known as SSRIs to treat gut disorders. And it's not just because they think it's all in your head. They're actually trying to increase serotonin production in the gut. because it also, that has a function as well. So we're learning a lot about the gut, even in Western medical side. So
we sure are. I think the last 10 years has been just a volcano of information that's come out from the microbiome to how the gut actually works, to finally the acknowledgement of what we knew thousands of years ago, that gut really is the heart of your body and the heart of where most, and the root of where most diseases begin if you don't take good care of it. So congratulations to all of you who are, you know, focusing on taking care of your gut. For those, Dr. Eric, who don't know what the heck's a pro-motility agent anyway, and why would I need it? Can you give a little background?
Well, again, so the peristalsis, or the natural squeezing of the gut that moves everything down so that when you eat something, it ends up moving to where it needs to go, is regulated by the nervous system in the lining of the gut. And this nervous system can go awry and not be functioning. Or furthermore, you could have a mechanical reason why things aren't moving down, like a hiatal hernia is a big one, where part of your stomach actually comes through the hole in the diaphragm, which is there by design to allow the esophagus to come through, but it pushes up through the esophagus's hole. And then what you have is you have a physical and a pressure created that causes digestive juices to get pushed and squeezed back up into the chest. So we want to do what we can in these cases to move things down. Also in SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, where you have bacteria that should have stayed in the colon have got escaped and come up out of their manhole, so to speak, you know, and are up there in the small intestine where you don't want them to be. And then they actually say, "Whoa, you just gave me a nice big meal and I'm going to ferment it and create all this gas." And then the person's going to feel crummy and they might have gas and bloating and burping. And so moving it down, especially if you're going to kill it off with an antibiotic, you then want to pack it back down. And that's where the pro-motility agents come in. We actually use pharmaceuticals for this purpose as well. The antibiotic erythromycin is a known pro-motility agent. And we will do this when we need to, for example, if we are giving tube feeds to a sick child who needs to be fed through a tube, we'll actually give them erythromycin to help them keep the tube down into the stomach, because it naturally might want to pull back out in the esophagus. So Western medicine has known about pro-motility agents too, but not as long as natural medicine is known about pro-motility herbs.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Okay, and then the last set are, you know, if the supplement companies will take the best of all these categories, or they'll make mixtures that are designed for specific conditions. And on the course website, under my supplement section, I have listed a lot of those proprietary mixtures. Some of them are known as medical foods, where that means that they actually have FDA approval, but they're not pharmaceuticals, and they'll combine hypoallergenic proteins like pea protein or rice protein with gut healing herbs, and possibly even substances to enhance the immune system in the gut, like milk oligosaccharides or immunoglobulins, and they'll all go into one supplement, and then you can take that as part of a gut healing protocol.
So before we go to testing, there's a good question. How do we decide what supplements to take? I'm going to read the exact question so I make sure I cover it completely. So is Dr. Grass's strategy to use the general anti-inflammatories plus supplements more directed to a specific problem? Example, turmeric for everyone. For example, GERD, add the supplements you mentioned, i.e. should we focus on our main issue if we are wondering what supplements to focus on? And adding to that, there's been some questions around how do I decide which supplements to take? So Dr. Eric, over to you, and then I'll share how I end up choosing what I took and for how long.
So I have a philosophy that's called test, don't guess. So whenever I'm able to test, through functional testing, which we're going to talk about, and I have a rationale for using something, like I have a rationale for a deficiency in pancreatic enzymes, I will go with those as a protocol to replace what I think is missing. We may be following the 4R or 5R program that we talked about on the kickoff call, in which case the supplements kind of plug into the protocol and the testing kind of plugs in, and I have a whole algorithm that I use. If you don't get the testing, or you don't have access to the testing, but you kind of have a diagnosis based on your set of symptoms, or maybe you were given a diagnosis by a health professional, it's fine then to just go to the supplements that are designed for that condition, with the caveat that that may not really be fitting with holistic systems of medicine, like Ayurveda, Chinese medicine, homeopathy, naturopathy, because again, it's sort of like just replace this pharmaceutical with this supplement. I call that green allopathy, which I think can be a problem, but it's generally better than pharmaceuticals in my opinion, because much fewer side effects in using natural substances, even naturally occurring substances that are created in a lab. So we have to remember the supplements are created in a lab, but they're with naturally occurring compounds. Herbs, whether they're whole herbs or teas or dried powders, are generally taken from the earth and go straight into the product. So I do want to make that caveat about green allopathy and how I don't think it necessarily is the be all and end all of helping somebody heal, but I think it's simple, and it's something that the patients can wrap their head around. I have this condition, therefore I'm taking this supplement because it has a rationale. But I want you to understand kind of how we think about the gut as such an important interconnected system in the body, and how I may not just be treating a symptom by replacing a supplement, replacing pharmaceutical for a supplement. Just to make that even simpler, because I sometimes, I want to answer the question in a way that you can take home some basic points. I would say if you have access to testing, get the testing and use the supplements as a response to the abnormalities in the testing. If you don't have access to testing, try the supplements based on what clinical condition you fit best into. And if you don't have a clinical condition you fit best into, then you may be treating a symptom alone. I have gas, try Carminative Herbs. I have heartburn, try pro-motility agents and demulcent herbs. I have constipation, try some of the things we talked about for constipation. It's trial and error to some extent, but the beauty of supplements and herbs is that the side effect profiles are so small compared to pharmaceuticals that you're so much less likely to cause yourself harm than going to your physician and getting a prescription.
Yeah, absolutely. When I got really, really sick, the first thing I did was invest in testing, because I really didn't want to play, lucky roulette with my body and take things. So I wanted to know what was wrong. Well, as it turned out, everything was wrong. So I had SIBO, I had Candida, I had parasites, I had leaky gut, I had dysbiosis, I had malabsorption. So all the testing we've listed here, I actually had all of those things. And then I hit menopause at the same time. And I had estrogen dominance. So there was a whole bunch of other stuff too. My strategy in taking the pills was very simple. If there was something I could do, so my philosophy is pills don't heal, the body heals itself. And so my strategy was I was going to nourish and strengthen my body so it could do what it needed to do. So whatever I took was with only one motto, which was I have to strengthen my body. I have to give it the nutrients it needs. But of course, I had these 19 symptoms and I couldn't continue living with those symptoms. So when you look at I'll just very quickly run through some of the critical supplements. I would say that there are core supplements, and then there are those, supplements just for that specific issue. I still take Thrifla today, even though my gut's completely healed of everything. My last set of tests came back clean. So I still take Thrifla. I still take psyllium husk. And then I take other things here and there. So I still take Restore, which you can take a look at it. It apparently helps rebuild communication. If you're going to take gluten, it's a really good product to take. I stopped taking endozyme, L-glutamine, colostrum, but I took those for a leaky gut. So again, I took those very specifically till I got tested, and it turned out I didn't have issues anymore. I do take Atrantil even now for SIBO, even though my SIBO is gone clinically. I just take it prophylactically because SIBO tends to come back. And it's all herbs. There's nothing pharmaceutical in it. It's all herbs. And you can look at the background on that. Dragon blood is a natural tree sap that will stop diarrhea. So when I initially had all kinds of weird things, diarrhea was a big one. I didn't want to take the anti-diarrhea meds. I had read up on all the problems, how it screws up the peristalsis to begin with. Dragon blood, 2 drops, completely natural product, like really cheap, like $9-10. And it's tree sap, and it's an anti-inflammatory, and it will just calm your gut down. Aloe, I still take aloe with my meals, just a tablespoon or 2, because it really does help the gut. And when I had parasites, I did take wormwood and berberine. As soon as my tests came clear, I stopped. And spirulina, so the things I took to strengthen my gut were I took these 3, spirulina, chlorella, and moringa. They are really what I believe gave me sort of the nutritional strength because I was nutritionally pretty weak. Collagen gelatin is all part of rebuilding your gut. Who knows if it works or not? I took it. They claim it does work. Digestive enzymes was to help with the absorption. These are the probiotics that I took. The Zena juice, which is amazing. It's a small company. They make live probiotic juices. So there's a turmeric juice, which is just turmeric root and probiotics. I love them. I still take them prophylactically. I took VSL-3 just when I was sick. I took Prescript Assist when I was sick, Primal Defense. I did take magnesium when things were really, really bad. And like Dr. Eric made a suggestion, I took Barlean's Intestinal Repair, which is sort of this combo formula, for about 6 months. So I hope that answers the question in terms of, I would say there's a few things you can take for general gut health, but get tested and find what the real issue is so you can really focus on resolving those issues and not just randomly taking supplements just because they sound good. The other thing I will say is, to the extent you can do nature, pick nature over pill. So dandelion, all the things that Dr. Eric went through, some of those are just natural, right? You can buy dandelion leaves and just throw them in your cup in hot water. That's what I do all day long. I drink my water with a base of little dandelions, or I'll do elderberries. I'll pop a tablespoon of elderberries in there and I'll just drink that water. Prunes are great, maybe if you've got issues, a couple of weeks you do prunes. So I think nature to me is always better than taking something that's in a pill form.
Yep. All right, testing. Okay, so, generally to get some of these tests, you do need to work with a practitioner who is connected to functional or specialized lab. Some testing, of course, is available through traditional labs. It can be ordered by your Western trained allopathic family physician or specialist. Comprehensive stool testing generally, again, is done through proprietary labs. I use Genova. I have a good relationship with them. I'm familiar with their testing. I'm comfortable with the interpretation. This will give me a window into everything from digestion and absorption, inflammation, the overall byproducts of the small intestinal of the microbiome. It will give me some DNA testing to quantify different species. However, I will say that we don't really know what to do with those results yet. The testing science is ahead of the clinical application, so be just leery of what we can learn about that. It will also look extensively for bacteria over the increased presence of bacteria in the stool. It will look for yeast. It will look for parasites through various methodologies. It will look for hidden blood, and now you can add zonulin, which is a test theoretically for suggesting leaky gut that can be done both on the stool and in the blood. So I use the I use this combination of culture-based and DNA-based stool testing. Some doctors prefer just a culture-based test because, again, the DNA testing is pretty modern and advanced, and we're not entirely sure what to do with the results yet. But you can pick up on things like inflammatory bowel disease. You can pick up on parasites. You can pick up on an overgrowth of normal pathogens, or pathogens that in small quantities seem to be okay, but in large quantities may be creating problems. You can pick up on the need for probiotics and digestive enzymes. And then, again, you can learn about the general state of the gut microbiome by the production of short-chain fatty acids. And so it's good testing. It's not that expensive. Medicare actually covers it, and which has been amazing because I do a lot of testing with Medicare patients. Food allergy testing, I don't want to spend too much time on because I could go on and on about it. My overall impression is that it's imprecise. Allergies can be mediated through a variety of mechanisms, not just what we may think of as a classic allergy where, oh, I know my brother's allergic to peanuts, and if he eats peanuts, he'll go into anaphylactic shock, so he never can touch a peanut. That's a little easier to diagnose because it's an IgE allergy, and you can pick up on it on skin prick testing. Harder to figure out are things like IgG-mediated allergies or delayed type allergies, type 3, type 4. And there are proprietary labs that claim that they can pick up on this. But what we've learned, and Rena and I were talking about this before the call, is that they're not so accurate. And you will show increased IgG to foods that you've either never had before, or you'll show increased IgG to foods that you have no problem with. And that is really just an example of the immune system doing its job. You will create immunoglobulins to proteins throughout life that you're exposed to, and those are like little soldiers who are specifically designed to go after that protein, and they're just waiting in the wings in case one of those proteins comes in and tries to take over their territory. But that does not mean that you actually are sick because of it. So I favor the elimination diet as a self-discovery for what foods you may not tolerate over food allergy testing, although I get asked about it all the time. Okay, so SIBO we've alluded to a lot already on this call. Small intestinal bacterial overgrowth of bacteria that should be staying down in the large intestine or the colon and have refluxed up through the ileocecal valve into the small intestine. What they will do there is when you feed them with food, they will actually digest the food and they will create gases, hydrogen gas and methane gas in particular. These gases can then be exhaled because they can get up from the small intestine into the stomach and out the esophagus and into the breath. And so you drink a lactose solution, and most of the tests you're drinking lactose, it's sugar. The sugar gets fermented and digested, and then the gases form, and you can blow into a bag and basically measure over several hours the increase in these gases that could suggest the presence of bacteria in the small intestine where they don't belong. Rena was informing me actually that there are non-breath tests that have come out for SIBO, and I don't have any experience with them, but now I'm curious. Candida, again, you would test in the stool. Unfortunately, that's really, you could diagnose Candida in the mouth. It's called thrush, and it's really easy to see. You can diagnose Candida in the esophagus if your gastroenterologist does an endoscopy on you and sees white patches. You can see Candida overgrowth in the stool, and you can do antibodies on the blood for Candida, which really, to me, again, only indicate that you've had even just a small amount of crossing of Candida yeast from the gut to the blood, and your immune system has done its job and said, we're not sure what this is, let's make some immunoglobulins against it. I don't think it helps you decide whether you have Candida overgrowth. And keep in mind, Candida in your blood is bad. If you have that, you're probably immunocompromised, you're probably very sick. So if you're walking into my office and telling me that you have systemic Candida, we need to get our terms straight, because I hope you don't have it in the blood, or else I need to put you in the hospital. Parasites, again, are detected in the stool. Either the bodies of the parasites, which are called just parasite, and then the eggs of the parasites, which are called ova. And that's why you call it a stool O and P, ova and parasites. We can also detect parasites through other technology called EIA, which is a different lab technique where we're looking for the presence of pieces of the parasites that are unique. This is easily done for Giardia, amoebas, and Cryptosporidium, which are commonly found in dirty water and contaminated food. So there are different ways to test for parasites. I do not recommend believing that you have parasites just because you have little white stringy things in your stool. But if you're like me and you pooped out a 2-foot worm once, you can believe that that's true. Indeed, I did have a worm that I managed to eliminate one time years ago. So that's a pretty definitive diagnosis there. Leaky gut, again, is a clinical condition that I will say I don't fully believe that it exists, or at least I think it encompasses more than just the way it's described, but it's classically described as a separation of the tight junctions that bind the endothelial cells together that line your gut, that create a barrier. And when those tight junctions are disrupted and open up, proteins can slip in between the cells when by design they are supposed to bind to one side of the cell, go through the cell, and then pass through the other side of the wall of the cell to go to the bloodstream. And in doing so, the immune system and the cells are allowed to sort of screen those proteins like surveillance and say, you're allowed in, you're not allowed in. And the theory is that when they slip in between the tight junctions, they are entering the bloodstream without being subject to surveillance, kind of like holes in a border where you don't go past border control. And then those antigens, which are proteins, antigens are small proteins, go right into the bloodstream without having to pass through border control. And then the bloodstream ends up saying, hey, how did you get in here? We don't like you, you're too big, or you didn't get screened. And then it goes and attacks. And so it can upregulate the immune system and cause the immune system to go on to overdrive and get stressed out. And then you can have friendly fire occur and you can attack your thyroid or your myelin sheath in your brain or some other part of your body, and that creates autoimmunity. So that's the theory behind leaky gut. And those tight junctions have certain proteins that make them up, kind of like little fibers, like glue that holds them together, one of which is zonulin. And therefore, the theory is if those tight junctions are coming apart and there's damage, the zonulin gets thrown both into the lumen, the hollow of the gut, and thrown in the other direction into the bloodstream. So that's why you can test zonulin either on stool or blood. And if it's elevated, the theory is that maybe you have a setup for leaky gut or you already have leaky gut. There are some other antigen or antibody-specific tests from Cyrex Labs that I know Rena did, which I am able to do, but I don't do much of because they're super expensive, and I'm not totally sure what to do with the results, but they say that they can also point towards leaky gut. Dysbiosis is a shift in the healthy bacteria in the gut, and that, again, is probably best detected by stool testing. However, and the same could be said of malabsorption, but there are also things that you can test in the urine called organic acids that can point to the possibility of dysbiosis, both bacterial dysbiosis and fungal or yeast dysbiosis, where we'll actually pick up byproducts of those organisms in the urine because they go into the bloodstream and then they have to get detoxified by the body and they come out in the urine. And so there's some clues that you can get, and I do a lot with my patients, something called a NutriVal, which is an organic acids test plus a whole lot more. And so you can take this testing in multiple pieces and kind of piece together a better picture of what might be going on. But again, it's individual, and the testing is not, it's not the be all end all, but it certainly, for me, adds to the picture. And if anything, it can rule things out. You can say to somebody, I'm pretty confident you don't have ulcerative colitis because the inflammatory markers in your stool are really low. Or you can say, I'm pretty confident that you don't have Candida overgrowth because they couldn't even detect any Candida in your stool. Or that you probably don't have parasites because the sensitivity is like 95% on the stool test. And so a lot of times that's where the value is that I can make people feel better because I tell them what they don't have.
It's always nice to know when you don't have something, as opposed
Although
to
patients, I mean, I don't know if this was you or not, Rena, but some poor patients, they're really suffering and they kind of want to know that something's wrong with them, because then there's a plan and they are so tired of going to doctors and being told that all their testing is normal. And that
was exactly me. That was exactly me when I went through kind of September 2015 till February 2016, when I lived at the hospital and they had poked and prodded from endoscopy, colonoscopy. I mean, they'd looked at everything because they were convinced there was cancer somewhere. And every result that came back negative was such a depressing episode, because it meant we had to continue the testing because we still hadn't figured out what was wrong. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. So that's kind of an interesting journey that patients go through when, you know, and I've spoken about this on some other summits and whatnot, like sort of what to do when medicine can't figure out what's wrong with you. And that's a whole nother topic, but
and my recommendation is get your body strong. And it will figure it out. Like, it will heal. If you can't find what's wrong, don't worry. It just means your body's really weak, and go back to the core and strengthen your body. And that's what this program's been about, is trying to strengthen your body through nutrition, through elimination, through the heal zone stuff. That's all about strengthening your body and giving it the space it needs to really calm down and then start to fix whatever is broken in there. There's a wonderful quote that Sadhguru says. He goes, you know, the maker of your body is inside you. You just need to let it do its job. And stop trying to do the job for it. Like, it knows what it needs to do.
I'll tell people the force that created you is the force that can heal you. So you have to try to harness that.
Exactly. Okay. So, I think this is our last slide. So we have a few questions. The first question is, what is MCT oil? So, Dr. Eric, you want to answer that? And then I can share mine.
Yeah, MCT stands for medium chain triglycerides. So it's just the triglycerides are 3 fatty acids on a glycerin backbone. So it's fat and sugar, and the meat and the length of the free fatty acids determines the size of the chain. And so there are some that are long, short, and then medium. And so medium chain triglycerides, what MCT stands for. The source of it, I'm not sure if it is. I know coconut oil has a lot of MCT, but when you buy quote unquote MCT oil, I don't know if it's just coconut or if they're sourcing it from another plant.
The good predominant ones are all from coconut. So like Bulletproof is from coconut, and the MCTs I take are all from coconut. And you'll see it'll say, you know, from clean coconuts or organic coconuts and harvested, and that they've taken it out. Yes. And it's
I mean, people like it for different reasons. They do, I believe, have some antimicrobial properties, so they may kill off some overgrowth. Furthermore, they do cross the blood-brain barrier pretty easily, which is this sort of selective barrier between the bloodstream and the tissues of the brain. So like if you're trying to actually get something into the brain, like a nutrient or a pharmaceutical, some things cross the blood-brain barrier easily and some things don't, which would mean they would have no effect if you were trying to get them into the brain. But MCTs do, and our brain really loves fat. It's the fattiest organ in our body. At least it should be. Unless you're pretty overweight and maybe your abdomen is the fattest organ. But, you know, we're talking 20%, 18% fat your brain is, and it needs lots of fat to function and to coat the lining of coat all the nerves. That's called myelin sheath. So that's what MCT is.
I took it primarily because when I stopped drinking coffee, and I haven't touched caffeine since September of 2015, my biggest challenge was, how do you get out of bed in the morning? And I was pretty sick, so there was a sort of a combined problem there too. And I had read that MCT oil really helps with brain fog, along with chaga mushroom tea. And so those are the things that actually worked for me. There's a lot more other things I tried that never worked, but MCT oil, sure enough, I'll take a whole tablespoon in the morning, and within 15, 20 minutes, I'll feel just completely clear, ready to go. My brain's sharp as a whiz. And I feel quite satiated because I do intermittent fasting. And so I won't typically eat until noon. And MCT oil keeps me full. So I do like it. And I'd done an interview with Dr. Dom. I don't know, Dr. Eric, if you know Dr. Dom D'Agostino, but he's a NASA scientist who's done a ton of research on keto. I'd interviewed him and I'd asked him in this podcast. And by the way, if you guys want to hear the podcasts, they're all on healerpedia.com/podcasts. So his podcast is on there as well. And my question to him was, Bulletproof's quite expensive, the Bulletproof MCT oil. Was the quality of the other MCT oil similar, or was there really a big difference between the quality? And so it's worth the extra money. And he laughed and he said, oh, funny you asked, because we actually have a lab and we love doing these silly tests. And so we actually did do these tests. We brought in all these different brands and we tested, and we found the differential was so minor that you actually can get away with just eating generic MCT, a standard good brand MCT oil. You don't have to
Which I guess is just, you could get coconut oil.
So the difference is that, and so that's where I get confused, because shouldn't we just take things the way nature intended and not mess around with them? But apparently MCT oil works better than coconut oil because of the blood-brain barrier, that apparently when you take it, it really does go straight up to the brain. Now, I don't know if I'm having a placebo effect, which, as you know, is 50%
I would think
validity.
There's some MCTs in coconut oil, but maybe what they've done is they've actually just extracted and filtered out everything else.
That's what they've done.
So that they just have a concentrated MCT.
That's exactly it.
I'm glad to hear that, because, Dave Asprey's, he's doing well enough. I don't think we necessarily need to
support him anymore. Absolutely. So you can buy the less expensive MCT oils. Okay, next question is, I have a bias about herbs, especially being potentially hard on the liver, kidneys. Do you suggest people get baseline liver and renal function tests prior to taking supplements, or starting the herbs and then getting tested regularly? Dr. Eric, what are your thoughts?
I guess the best scientific method would be to get baseline testing, because if you have an elevated liver function test after you've been on, milk thistle which actually can raise your liver function test, meaning it can actually cause some liver toxicity. You don't know whether it was from the herb or some underlying condition that was undiagnosed previously. Having said that, if you look at the literature, there is so little risk in taking herbs, especially compared to pharmaceuticals. I won't say that there's zero risk at all, and there may be subtle things that we just can't detect. But it's there are very few herbs that I even have to give people warnings about. I mean, there are some, because we know they compete for enzymes in the liver, things like St. John's wort, or they interact with other pharmaceuticals that people may be on. But for the most part, they're really safe. I mean, there's been, I think it's the FDA maintains a reporting system for reporting adverse effects of, non-FDA controlled substances, so like non-pharmaceuticals. And I think that in the history of the reporting, which has been going on for over 30 years, there's only been 9 potential deaths from herbs and supplements, whereas some people argue that Western medicine is the 3rd leading cause of death in America. So we're talking about almost nothing from herbs and supplements. But certainly it's possible. And a lot of times, probably if there's some liver toxicity, it wasn't even from the compounds itself. It was from contaminants that got into the supply, because of, more likely to happen in imported stuff. China, even in India, you can get heavy metals and other toxins and chemicals that are used to extract or preservative that can cause, organ damage versus the actual product itself.
That is such an important point you just made, that I'm so glad you made it, because we hadn't touched upon this, which is, when you do take herbs, where do you get these herbs? What thrift should you buy? Yeah. And I think you just identified the number one concern I had, because a lot of the testing shows that herbs, and I'm Indian, so I can say this, but herbs from India and herbs from China are so toxic, even if they say they're organic. And here I am, I do take organic Banyan botanicals, but I've done my research. A lot of their stuff comes from Himalayas, etc. But if I can find a replacement that's outside of India and China, I favored those. So Chyawanprash was a big deal. I was taking Chyawanprash back to make my body strong. And it's one of those wonderful jams that has so many loaded additives because of where it's processed. So I found someone in the US that has a very pure, organic, hand farmed. Now, granted, it's more expensive, but to me, it was worth paying the extra to get the very highest quality herbs in me.
Yeah.
The other thing, Dr. Eric, what are your thoughts on sort of composites in pills versus just buying organic herbs and just blending them yourself? So for example, trufla, buying individually, or ashwagandha or DGL licorice, as opposed to buying something in a capsule with lots of other things in it.
So you're talking about like single herb versus combinations?
Or a single herb in a bag, how you can buy wholesale. So that's what I've been doing. Like I've been buying, wholesale herbs. And like I bought wholesale licorice, organic root licorice from this one brand, which is locally crafted.
Yeah.
And then just putting the 1/4 teaspoon in hot water and drinking it instead of buying the licorice pills.
Yeah, I mean, again, there's a lot of different subtleties here. So sometimes we're talking about the difference between a standardized extract and a whole herb. That's one conversation that I think we could debate, and we won't really get a good answer. Then you can talk about, taking a capsule form versus a dry powder, tincture, a tea, and the differences there are going to be in the absorption rate potentially because of just how it's processed, if you will, or how it's prepared. And then also some people theoretically could react to things in the capsule. I mean, most of the good reputable companies use hypoallergenic capsules, but if you're a complete stickler, you will realize that they actually do put things in there like wood pulp and other things that actually they have to do to make the capsule hold together. Then if you're talking about companies that may not have stuff that's super clean, there may be some other additives, like if it's a medical food powder or a proprietary powder, they may actually have cellulose. They may actually have gums in them, like guar gum, that theoretically people could react to who are extremely sensitive to things. So certainly the closest to nature is to do whole herbs that then are prepared either by your local herbalist or yourself in your own kitchen. But I still think there are enough reputable companies out there that, for example, you could get turmeric in a capsule, and it really is just the capsule, which is hypoallergenic, and then the 3 herbs dried and powdered. And it's nothing else. And so I don't really have much concern there.
What is your favorite brand?
Well, I mean, I hesitantly share this because, again, I don't want to pretend as if I know 100% that one is better than the other. Metagenics, I have a very close relationship with. And again, this is what happens when you're a practitioner and you sell certain brands. If you sell a lot of their brand, they pay close attention to you, and they basically utilize their resources to engage me. So I have a rep that comes and visits me every 6 weeks, and I ask her hard questions like, go find me the study that you did on this, or tell me your manufacturing process and tell me how you test this and who you're using, and show me your third-party reports. And so I have developed a loyalty to them because I have such close access to them. Whereas if it's a brand that, for example, isn't a professional grade brand they sell to the public, how am I going to call up somebody from, say, Now brand and get a straight answer as to where they source their B complex from? The other thing that's happening is a lot of these companies are getting bought out. Sadly, I just found out that Pure Encapsulations has now been bought by Nestle.
Oh, no.
Which is a shame because I use a lot of Pure Encapsulations. They've been around for 25 years. They're very hypoallergenic. And they have a lot of supplements that I need, like single compound supplements. If I need an activated B5, they have it. If I need N-acetylcysteine by itself, they have it. Garden of Life is also owned by Nestle. So, you get, but honestly, most of these companies actually get their raw ingredients from the same suppliers.
Right. That's what I've heard.
So the raw ingredients are coming from the same suppliers, but the difference in the integrity is the testing, the third-party testing for contaminants, heavy metals, PCBs, Metagenics, for example, radiation tests all of their fish oil, and you can actually see the reports because of fears of Fukushima and whatnot, and so it's and then do they follow the California Proposition 56 or something, which is the strictest standards, and a lot of people in the industry say it's too strict, but for lead levels, what can happen is like smaller companies or even might let doctors make their own proprietary blends, and they'll I can call up a company and go, I want to have my own, gut healing powder, and I want you to put this, and this in it, and I want you to private label it for me. And they don't have to follow the proposition for California. So I could be picking something that is more likely to have lead with something else. It's more likely to have lead with something else. And then the total lead amounts, are over the limits and stuff. So, and then a lot of the cheaper companies, they cut corners, they cheat. I don't know if you remember, about 4 years ago, the Attorney General in New York State actually went ahead and requested testing on some supplements, and they found that they weren't even what they said was in it. So it was like common things like saw palmetto. They were taking ground up houseplants and filling the capsules, and there wasn't even saw palmetto.
That's right.
And so it's just like anything these days. There's a lot of deceit and cheating, and so that's why I go with, I tend to use Metagenics. I use Quicksilver for some of my real specialized stuff with gut things. That's a guy named Chris Shade. He's a PhD. And then I'll use, local herbalists that Wildcrafts that I trust. There's a company here called Herbs Etc. that's a national brand, but it's made in Santa Fe, and they do a great job with things. So
wonderful.
Yeah.
Other questions? Thank you so much. That was very comprehensive. Really appreciate
you don't get short
answer.
answers from me unless
I appreciate,
and
I'm sure
I give a short answer.
And our listeners appreciate that. Our program participants absolutely appreciate that, because that's what they're looking for. I think you can quickly Google and get generic answers, but I know they're looking for kind of detailed answers from someone trusted like yourself. So thank you for sharing. And I think it is so important to be careful what you put in your body, even if it's an herb. And I think you've answered the question of how do you go about picking those herbs. We have another question. I'm trying to load. Somehow my screen just froze. Okay. And great. So looks like we don't have any more questions. What I'd love to do is go back to the website and share with you again very quickly the two links there. It's very easy to go through the site. So please do keep visiting on the welcome page. So you'll see I'm going to click on welcome. We have added quite a few new things. We have added the calls, the kickoff call, the call with Shelby. Here's the schedule of calls so you can see when the next few calls are. We've added a frequently asked questions section. Here's, of course, the Heal Journal, bootcamp rules, and everything else is there. So these are some of the additional things we've added, including the frequently asked questions. There was a request to put in more specific recipes for the elimination diet itself. And it is right now in meal plan, but we're going to add it to the elimination diet section as well. So as you can see, we've added right on top the elimination diet friendly recipes. Below that is a simplified 14-day menu. And then of course, below that, you can see lots and lots more recipes. So just very quickly to spend a quick minute on this, for someone who's decided that they want to go completely follow Dr. Eric's elimination diet with everything eliminated, you'll find that these recipes are going to meet those needs. So we're just going to have Dr. Eric review this one more time, and then we'll release it tomorrow. But it has been pulled together. So I think some of you on the call had been hoping for something like this. So there you have it. And finally, for those of you who say sometimes you get emailed, sometimes you don't, again, I want to remind you, we have all the days up here. So if somehow you didn't get an email, please check your spam. Please whitelist us. But if not, it's fine. You can log into the website and you'll have access to that day's information. All right. Well, I'm going to stop sharing at this point. I want to thank you so much for joining. Dr. Eric, thank you so much. This was,
you're welcome.
This
was
my
pleasure.
Phenomenal. A lot of great information. We will go ahead and get this recording up. And we will see you all soon on our next call. Until the next time, stay smiling and keep your gut healing. Keep it on that spa retreat. We'll see you soon.
Rena? Rena, Eric, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, hi Shelby.
Oh, hey. Hey, I had this call down for 7 p.m. Was I mistaken?
I don't know what time zone you're in.
Oh, well, I'm Pacific.
6 Pacific is what it was.
Oh, I just thought it was at 7. I had it down at 7. But of course, you're an hour. Well, I'm sorry. I showed up a quarter till thinking it started at 7. But I mean, not that I was